with playing Mind Rack Demons and Gear Hulks because Reflector Mage is gone. So Reflector Mage was one of the things boxing cards like this out. And the combination of the metagame shift away from, well, not the fact that Reflector Mage is no longer a concern, and the fact that you want to be slanted more aggressively means that these are just perfect cards. Like, they just slot right in. The interaction with Walking Ballista and Gear Hulk is insane. I guess we should take a minute to talk about the Gear Hulk, or the Ballista. So, Triskelion is good, and cheaper Triskelion is better, and a Triskelion that you can pump mana into is even better, and one with amazing synergies is awesome. So, first of all, you can just throw this away for Delirium. Like, straight up, almost. Because it's creature and artifact, so you'll have a removal spell in a land or whatever, and it's just like one card Delirium. Then, the counters combo with the Snake, so you can double down that way. And Gear Hulk just turns it into a straight machine gun. Ballista is... I wonder how since Delirium was with only 5 card types. Well, that's the thing, right? This deck doesn't need Delirium. That's why it can get away with not playing Vessel and stuff. Like, Mind Rack Demon, you take 4, that sucks, but whatever. Grimflayers are good anyway, and will give you Delirium if they stay in play. And you don't have, Emrakul... Like, your only actual Delirium card is to the Slaughter. Because you're not leaning on the spider. What's her name? Ishkana. You're not leaning on Ishkana anymore. So you don't have to worry about, like, I need Delirium by turn 5 to stabilize. Because, A, you're not under that much pressure because Smuggler's Copter and Reflector Mage were the super aggressive cards that you needed your Ishkana to come down and stabilize you against. And with that no longer the plan, like, getting Delirium ASAP is not that big of a deal. If you have to take 4, whatever. If your Flare's a 2/2 for a while, whatever. Yeah, like, if your Traverse has to get a land, or you, like, have to hold it. Again, like, look, he has multiple copies of all of his cards. Like, the reason that turning on Delirium for Traverse early was so important with the old Delirium decks was because you had to get Ishkana. Like, you literally needed to have access to Ishkana early and then play it, and have Delirium throughout. No longer the case. These are just lay of the lands with insane free roll kickers. And, like, the things that you're getting with them are just good utility, or not, they're good cards that you can get a little added utility out of choosing which one you get, but it's not bullets, right? There's not a bunch of one-ofs here that you need Delirium to find. You don't need to have your Ishkana on 5 and your Emrakul on 8. So you don't need the tutor to be on super, super early. Plus, the curve is so much lower that you're using your mana at those points anyway. So back to Ballista. Ballista also curves perfectly into Rishkar, which makes it not only add mana, but also get another shot off. And Winding Constrictor, I mean, the synergies are real simple, but real strong with these plus and plus 1 counters. He didn't overdo it, right? He's not playing a bunch of cards that just put on counters. These are cards that are good in their own right and have their own purpose in the deck. Like, Rishkar Pima Renegade is probably the worst of these, and it's one that grants counters, and it does so at a very good rate. Like, yeah, exactly, it's like Tarmogoyf. Like, just playing out the game, Delirium will happen because of the way that you built your deck, and you don't have to race to it like before. That's why you can get away with not playing things like Vessel. But Rishkar, like, I thought 3 was a little high, and I still think that maybe this should be like 2 and 3 trackers or something. But, like, this is, you're still getting a good rate on this card, and it's one of your payoff cards for the plus and plus 1 counters. There's no card that's not good, right? The power creep in Magic is such that, like, every card is just insane. There's no excuse to be playing cards that are only good in small narrow situations. Like, every card needs to stand on its own, and then you look at the internal synergies. And that's exactly what he did when building this, which is why I like it so much. Only 2 Evolving Wilds is kind of interesting. Like, I guess you just have too many comes into play tap lands with too low of a curve, but usually the land and spell are like what get you to Delirium. But again, you're not that hard pressed to have Delirium early. And then the removal split is pretty interesting. Grasp is still king. One more word on the Ballista. Ballista is another on-board way to deal with the Saheeli Rai combo. If you just have a Ballista with 1 counter, then they can't go off because the Saheeli Rai has to go down to 1. Even if it's already above, so they have a Saheeli Rai, and they plus it to 4, and then play the other thing, and blink a land or whatever, and the Saheeli Rai goes down to 2 and blinks the Felidar Guardian, then the Guardian blinks the Saheeli Rai comes back with 3, and when it tries to blink the Guardian again, it has to go down to 1 at some point, and then you just shoot it. And the reason that it's important to have something in play that can answer it is because those decks are going to be protecting themselves with negates and dispels and whatnot, and it's a lot harder to guard against both on-board and in-hand answers, right? If you just had Ballista and not instant speed removal, then it would also be easy to deal with because they could just use a shock or whatever. But if you have a Ballista and a removal spell, then it's hard for them to sort of have all of those and the lands and the combo pieces and enough time and mana to use it all. So that's another reason why Ballista is great. 3 risk cards help them out. Yeah. It's definitely a strong payoff card that is great on its own, and you're getting a good rate. It's just it is the fact that this is the weakest card in this deck shows how powerful every single card in the deck is. That's the point I was making there. For Grasp is still king. Copter's gone, but Heart of Kirin is kind of slotting in a little bit, and there's some things that Fatal Push doesn't get. Such as Verdurous Gearhulk in response to the trigger. Archangel Avacyn's a really key one. There's definitely, still... This is still the best removal spell if you can get away with playing a BB card. Fatal Push is super strong, and... Alright, they don't have... He doesn't have another one on the board. I thought that maybe it would be pushed up against aggro decks, but he has the expertise instead, which we'll get to in a second. But the Fatal Push is cool because there's a surprising number of ways to proc it. First of all, another removal spell does it. Then you have Evolving Wilds, and also Clues, which a lot of people were looking at. Everybody knows Fatal Push is insane in Modern, but how do you get Revolt consistently in Standard? And one of the things that people look to... the first reaction is Evolving Wilds, but Clues are right there behind, and 2 trackers, 2 Evolving Wilds, there's definitely some sort of looking in this direction. And then Ballista also obviously can just suicide by trading for something usually. Grasp I already went over. To the Slaughter is a weird one, but it's a good utility one. It's another instant speed thing, and if you have Delirium, the payoff is huge. Every deck has Planeswalkers now. If it's not the Saheeli Rai combo, which this just... How? There's, Gideons and whatnot. And Ruinous Path is the same thing. The Awaken is not the reason you're playing this, It's the fact that, this thing isn't too good against tokens, but you'll always be able to get their Nisa or whatever it is with the Ruinous Path. But I like this split. I really like this removal split, and then 3 Traverse. Totally fine, totally legit. Noxious Gearhulk, sure. Natural State is an interesting one. Especially when you have things like Walking Ballista. There are reasons to be afraid of a Stasis Snare for value, and then just other targets. I think maybe going forward you might want to split these with the straight Naturalizes because of combo. because people still play big artifacts. And being able to kill those is usually something that the green-black deck struggles with. More to the slaughter, again, just great. The one Ishkanon, one Kalidas, the Traverse, Bullets, post-board, super strong. I might even want to play like one Ishkanon main just because it adds so much power to your Traverse to have access to an Ishkanon main. But that's something that you don't really have to worry about as long as you're the aggressor. And this deck is slanted to be the aggressor. You only really need the Ishkana. You don't need it. The only times that you would look to the Ishkana is when you are not the beatdown, and those matchups should be great anyway. Things like red-white aggro, red-white vehicles. Like, your deck is really well set up to fight them already. You don't need to invest a slot in a card that's not great in that matchup. It's just so tempting because it makes your traverses so much better, but 1-1 in the board is cool. The one Nisa, one Ob Nixilis, sure. I'm sure that there's a totally legit reason to be playing these, but I don't really get it. They're kind of like anti-mid-range cards, because like they're not anti-control, right? Because they're super expensive sorcery speed things, and a lot of the control decks will just punish you. They'll just counter this, and then they'll have Torrential Gearhulks or even Saheeli Rai. New meta gonna be 80% just getting to yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna invest a whole lot of thought into X-Mage results, but it does seem that no combo is the way that a lot of the control decks are going. Like, they're playing blue-black or just Jeskai without the combo. Both of which I think are interesting. But anyway, these card choices are a little weird to me, and I'd like to hear what matchups they're for, because they stand out as odd to me. Yohani's expertise, obviously, for aggro, and just seems insane. I would be hard-pressed to play a deck that loses to this thing, because it's such a ubiquitous and powerful sideboard option for so many decks that I really don't want to be in a position where I'm just facing these all day. And then Lost Legacy, I actually don't like. I'd prefer these to be straight discard spells, because, well, I think this card's just bad, first of all. And secondly, without Emrakul, it's like pretty hard to have to answer something. Like, if you play against Aetherworks Marvel with Ulamogs, getting Ulamog is okay, but you could also just have discard and try and hit the thing, or have better naturalizes and play around it that way. Like, I really don't think this is effective there. And then you don't need this against the Saheeli Rai combo. You're pretty well set up against it, and a discard spell would be just as good, if not better. So I really don't understand this card choice and think that it's probably just incorrect. I would, pick the Brain or the Transgress. You could do like 2 Transgress and 1 Pick the Brain. My first reaction was just it should be 3 Transgresses, but I'm really off this card. But I think I'm off this card and curious about these two. And other than that, I think he built the deck awesome. Oh, and I would split the natural states, but that's something small. I think this deck is great, and it's not surprising at all that he won. And he won in dominant fashion, too. Like, you just crushed the tournament. Good deck. Whoops, introductory products. That is not what I want. Steven Dykman, green-black aggro. So this was, like, the bad version of the other deck. This is just like the same idea, a lot of the same ideas, and just executed way poorly. Way more poorly. Verdurous Gearhulk and Walking Ballista numbers are not 4 and 4. This card, isn't even a card. I don't get Dark Confidant, this is not. There's this whole energy sub-theme with, like, this thing and this thing and this thing that I just really don't get. I don't get this card at all, really. And then you have to play a bunch of terrible cards to help support it. Like, I don't understand. Tiania said his one loss was the Reservoir combo. That's not surprising. His deck, the way that he built his deck, he's like just begging to lose the combo. He should be splitting those things and playing discard instead of Lost Legacy to give himself. Like, he can go from like a 10% matchup to a 50% matchup very easily with a couple of card choice changes. But yeah, I just don't get it. I think it's bad. Tireless Tracker, Winding Constrictor. Like, you see the same idea as Rishkar, right? Like, you see the same ideas here, but then the deck is diluted with all this energy shit. And, like, doesn't have the traverses for the added redundancy. This 3-3 split doesn't make sense. And it doesn't have the consistency of 4 and 4 here. Just, Kalitas is, like, kind of a nonsense card, and then Nisa is a straight up nonsense card. Like, I actively think that this card is not good right now. And, like, you can kind of make it work in, like, green-white tokens, but what is it doing in this deck? Like, you don't have anything that makes more than one creature besides the Kalitas if you have a million mana. Like, it's really hard to go wide with this thing. The interaction with Ballista is cute, but, like, you're splitting 2 and 2 with Cure Hulk, you know? Like, it's hard to say that Nisa's good with Ballista when you're playing less than 4 Cure Hulk. And then, since it doesn't have the traverses, it doesn't have the Evolving Wilds, and without the Evolving Wilds, your Fatal Pushes are even worse, but he's still playing 3 Fatal Push, 3 Grasp. And Aether Hubs that are not good just for this weird, terrible Dark Confidant thing that just, like, this thing just matches up hilariously poorly against Ballista and Shock. He has 3 trackers but no Evolving Wilds. Like, I just hate everything about this deck. That's not true. I like the ideas of DeCandio's deck that are in this deck, but the execution is extremely poor and the deck is extremely diluted. Use it for the plus. I know, but that's like not a good. That's not a good card. That's not a good investment. Sideboard, the 4th tracker seems a little much. More removal. Murder, I don't really get. Natural Stage, I think these should be split, but sure. Mixed List, I still don't really get, but okay. I like the Transgresses and hate the Lost Legacies, especially when you're this redundant. I think that this deck is bad. Poorly built. For Gear Hulks? That's a stupid reason, though. Like, there are better things than Murder still. Hopefully this isn't the same deck. No, okay. Oh, I like this one so much more! 4 Gear Hulk, 4 Ballista. Yes! Sifter is actually good, unlike that energy shite. Advocate? Okay, sure. The Constrictors, of course, and 4 Rishkar? Sure. 2 Fatal Push, 4 Grasp, the correct split. Heart of Kirin instead of the other one. And Nisa, which still sucks, but it is a lot better than it was in the other deck. First of all, Heart of Kirin. Second of all, Catacomb Sifter. Third of all of the Ballistas and more 2-drops that are going to live and do something and be around longer. I still think it's a bad card, and I definitely wouldn't play 4, but at least this player is trying to make their Nisas work Whereas in the other deck, it was just like, Nisa's kind of good, and I have 2 in my collection. Like, it made no sense in that deck. Whereas here, at least, and the 4th Rish card, like, they're really pushing these +1/+1 counters and have the Heart of Kirin. So they're at least putting the Nissa to work, which I like. But still not as much as the Candios. They do have Evolving Wilds for the Fatal Pushes, but no Trackers in the main, 3 in the board. And no Traverses, so meh. But I like Sifter. Sifter's a super powerful card that can do a lot of work, especially when you're like ramping a Gear Hulk. You go like Constrictor into Sifter into Gear Hulk. That's a good curve. And being able to have multiple bodies for your Nisa, which you shouldn't be playing these, but if you're going to, at least put in the work, I like. And then the Liliana is a little out of place, but whatever. It's a powerful card that's a one of. I'm not too concerned about it. Sideboard trackers I like. This is the one that I would split with. The natural states. People that are playing natural states, I would play like 1 natural state and 2 of these, or 1 of each, or something like that. Because I think that this, being able to kill like Reservoir and Marvel and all that stuff is really important. Kalitas for aggro, sure. Obnixilis I still am not really into. I used to like these sort of hedgy mid-range cards, but like, look at what you're matching up against. Like, is there really a situation where the opponent just has 1 creature and no creature land? Like, they don't have a Hissing Quagmire that can just attack this if you play it and destroy a creature? It seems pretty hard for that to be the case. Not really a huge fan. What is Harvester? Keep saying Harvester, but that's literally not on any of these cards. I literally don't know what card you're talking about. The 3/5? That card is really bad. Really, really bad. Like, the card itself is fine-ish in specific matchups, and then you just have to play a bunch of terrible cards to make it work. Like, you can just play Heart of Kirin if you're playing Nisas anyway, you know? I don't think that vehicles are good in this deck. You have so much forward momentum and so much like board presence. Like, do you really want to tap your huge monsters to make a 3/5 active? Underwhelming at best. Like, if it ever has to fight, it falls to Grasp, falls to Fatal Push, if Revolt's a thing. Like, I see where it's good in some matchups, but like, you have to have them in your deck all the time. If you can get an instant win versus these, that's just not true. I mean, Wrath of God is a very good card, and it is good against the green monsters, and that is historically true. But when each card is individually so strong, like, if you Fumigate, I can just, as the green-black deck, like, I can just play 2 giant creatures on the next turn. Plus, then you have Fumigate in your deck. Plus, I'm going to have Transgresses instead of Lost Legacies. Going to the sideboard, Flaying Tendrils instead of Yahani's Expertise. I get that you want to, like, keep your Sifter around or whatever, but Yahani's Expertise is just so much better. and Transgress I love, obviously. I skipped over Distended Mindbender because I think this card is great in not this metagame. I think this card is great if people are playing like the Jeskai decks, but I didn't see a lot of that. So it depends on the metagame, but if the metagame is right for Mindbender, then there's no card that does what this does. And I think if I was playing the Traverse package, I would have a Mindbender in my sideboard. Like if I was playing DeCandio's deck tomorrow, I would have a Mindbender in my board for sure. Moving on, Hunter Nance, green-white tokens. Why? What? Why? This is the sign of somebody that over metagamed for a new format. Like, one maybe, but to play two of these, you think you know something that is not actually true. Love me a Thraben Inspector. I think that this is a card that a lot fewer people are playing because of the bans, but is still a great card. You know, it went from a 95 out of 100 to an 85 out of 100. Like, it's still great. Good for wins and losses. It's not even like you're a deck with like looters and stuff that you can just throw it away if it's not good. It's just a straight up terrible card a huge percentage of the time. Not playing Basalt. What's that thing called? Triskelion is nonsense. Pacifist I don't really love. I don't really love Advocate that much either, I guess. Rather just play the Ballista as my 2-drop. And then Heart of Kirin, so you have to play your Nisas. It also, like, says tokens at the top, but it's not really tokens. So that's a little confusing. For Oath of Nisa? Like, why? Why, though? I thought you were... You also have so many misses. What are you doing in here? Oath of Nisa. This is just literally because sometimes you can't cast your Nisa on 3 into Gideon on 4. Guess. I feel like you could fix your mana base since all your 2-drops are green anyway. Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it. Stasis Snare is one of the better removal spells. And that's all I have to say about this deck. It's just... This deck looks like all of the green and white cards in my collection. I don't even understand why you call it tokens, because you have these? I guess. I don't know. The old Pacifist in the sideboard. Quarantine Field, I don't love. Fourth Snare, sure. Would probably be playing all 4 main. Blessed Alliance is fine. Heroic Intervention. Yeah, I mean, if you're playing against rats and stuff, I get. Natural State, I would still split those. Thalia on the board. Like, why don't you play Thalia main instead of Authority? At least it has a body. Six mana Ajani. This is like the Obnixilis of these decks. I still think it doesn't make sense. Fragmentized, so they are splitting them somewhat. But if you have green, you can just play the instant speed one. Fumigate in your creature deck, sure. Shram's Expertise. Sure. Seems weird to not be playing these main in your token deck. Like, how powerful is this into Nisa? That's super strong. Like, that's what a token deck would be doing. Not Authority of the Consuls and Oath of Nisas. I don't know. I would have built this deck completely differently. Bobby Graves! Good to see him in a top 8. 4 colors, Saheeli Rai. I'm gonna have to read some of these cards. I like this card, but not in this deck. Tune with Aether is a weird one, too. So the green is basically for this thing, it looks like. Oath fixes your mana for your Saheeli Rai, as well as digging for pieces. Refiner lets you... Like, this deck has the highest number of things that you can just fill at our Guardian for value, which is what you really want. Like, you want to play a normal game and get your value, and then kind of grind them into comboing. And then occasionally you'll just turn through Saheeli, turn 4, Felidar when they don't have an answer or whatever, but like, this is the way that I would build a Saheeli Rai deck, a lot closer to this at least. I mean, I'm not sure that I would have Cloud Blazer in my deck, at least not on purpose. But yeah, sure. Rogue-based Saheeli combo. I mean, that's kind of what this is. This is a green-red deck, right? Like, Attune Oath, Shock Lightning, Servant. I would say that this is like green-red based splashing blue and white. Obviously, it's more muddled than that, but the best deck in the tourney is Decandio's, for sure. Decandio's deck was the best and the best built. There's a lot of weird, like... Because the deck makes more energy than it has ways to spend. I don't think you need this much energy, and then you have to play like Whirler and Aether Thief just to have ways to spend your energy. Not a huge fan of that. But I think this deck is sweet. Yeah, like you're playing 3 Attune the Aether, but only 2 Evolving Wilds. What? Like, you're not doing anything good with your energy. Harness Lightning is the only thing, and you have plenty for that. Just play, like, 2 more Evolving Wilds and another land over these Attunes. You already have Oath. I don't get it. But anyway. I like this deck. It's cool. It's a cool idea. I just don't like the way that it's actually constructed. Sideboard, another Aether Thief, Tireless Trackers, Dispels, Negates. Oath of Chandra? It's kind of a weird one. Jace, this is the Ob Nixilis, except way better. And Nahiri. Love it. I like these a lot better than the other Planeswalkers, for obvious reasons. And then Radiant Flames. Pretty strong sweeper. Oh, this double removal with Guardian. That makes sense. That is cute. It's like, I definitely get the fact that you can, like, kill a thing and then go after a Planeswalker with another thing, but blinking it with Guardian is gas. I definitely had, when I was first brewing Felidar Guardian decks, I had a 4-color deck that was just like all Planeswalkers and Oaths and Felidar Guardian. It was like the whole deck. Yeah, Traverse, you could probably build a deck with Traverse fairly easily. Like, you couldn't really do it here straight up, but a couple tweaks you could. I'm into it. And I assume this is the same deck. Not quite. Wow, not at all. This is the deck that we were just talking about. The deck that we were just conversing about its possible potential existence. How are these decks the same name? This is like 4-color Saheeli Planeswalkers. And the other one's 4-color Saheeli Energy or something. 5-color Super Friends deck? Yeah, that's the deck I was just talking about. I definitely built that deck. Like as soon as the set was spoiled. It's on my other computer. Maybe I'll tweet it if I think it's good. I haven't looked at it since then. But but this is interesting. Alright, let's start here, I guess. Pilgrim's Eye, because you don't have the shitty energy attune, plus it is an artifact for Delirium. Gearhulk as a one-of defined with Traverse is a little weird. I guess blinking it is kind of cool, but if you're not playing the Ballistas, I'm not sure I like it. Guardians, obviously, when it enters the battlefield... Okay, so this is just a 1/2 Death Touch that can get a little saucy, a little bigger later on, but this is a defensive measure for sure. Servant is just too good. Terrarion triggers Revolt and Delirium and fixes your mana. Harness Lightning, you have Servant and Aether Hubs, so you can still make this work. That's why I was like, you don't need all this energy stuff in the last deck. Like, your Harness Lightning still work. Main deck Negate, this is something that more of these decks should be doing. Then the Oaths for the Guardian, I love. Plus redundant Oaths, and Oath of Jace, like you can discard enchantments, and if you have like 2 Oath of Nisa, you have an enchantment in the yard to get to Delirium for Traverse. But your payoff for Traverse is not that high. Like, you're not going to find a Pilgrim's Eye. Finding Gearhulk is a weird niche thing. Getting Guardian is gas, but you can't find both sides of it. And then this thing and this thing are worthless to get. I would think you would want, like, an Ishkana or something. Some payoff to play Traverse. Yeah. Terrapip Pup and untap it. Get in for one. Blink it out, comes back bigger. Value. Yeah, not sure about all that. Nisa? Oh, it's just 5-mana Nisa, thank God. I thought this was 3-mana Nisa again. I'm like, what are you even doing in this deck? But 5-mana Nisa, whatever. Chandra Saheeli. I'm a little surprised to not see Nahiri. I think Nahiri is one of the better planeswalkers you could play in this deck. I feel like the whole point of making Delirium Traverse is that you don't have to play 4 Guardians. The problem is Guardian is a good card. Saheeli Rai is the one that sucks. Right? Like, legitimately, Guardian, if you build your deck like this, is a very good card. Like, blinking an Oath is just value. The problem is Traverse doesn't find Saheeli, so you can't play like 4 Guardians because they're good, and then like 2 Saheeli and Traverses. There's another deck that had Saheeli and Nahiri in it. Good. I think Nahiri's insane. Like, I would be playing 2 Nahiris over like Anissa and Ashandra or something like that. This Nisa's real good at beating up on other planeswalkers. I will say that much. Like the negate. Guess I don't really have anything else to say about this main deck. Pretty sure you just play all Lumbering Falls. Unless you really needed this extra red source. But yeah, I'm not gonna go through the mana base and nitpick it apart. Sideboard. Implement of Combustion in the board. So I guess this is for the combo, because this can just sit and play and you just leave a red up to shoot the Saheeli. The same as a Ballista, but this can't be like shocked. Plus it cycles if it's bad. It's fine. Vessel in the board? No thank you, don't understand it. Not interested. Like, you can make an argument for Vessel on the board, but like, there's no way that it's better than something high impact. It's just an inefficient use of a sideboard slot. Dispels and shocks and natural states, sure. Here's the Ishkana that you can search for. There's no other creatures that you can search for, which is interesting. Release the Gremlins is cute. But I think you want an instant speed one. I think you just want Naturalize. Gideon's and Nahiri. And Radiant Flames. Alright. If I'm playing Vessel for Delirium, I better play more than one Ishkana. Well, it's just like, if you want Vessel, then just like cut a Oath of Jace for it, you know? Like, don't waste the sideboard slot for this card that just cycles to get your Ishkana. Like, if you're not getting Delirium for your Traverses, your Ishkana is not going to be any good anyway, right? Because, like, your Vessel has a pretty small percentage of hitting the Ishkana, so you're going to have Delirium to have the extra copies of the Ishkana that you're boarding in. Like, it's pretty backwards thinking, I think. Yeah, definitely some things about this deck I would change, but I definitely like the idea. And it's a lot less cute than the Bobby Graves version, which I like. Alright, Jeskai Saheeli. Straight up. None of that green nonsense. So this is the way that I would build this deck. Like, straight control with Gearhulks. And then you can just do this also. Anticipate, Disallow is so good. Glimmers for your Harness Lightnings. Negate. Don't like Rebuff. I think Negate is good and Rebuff is bad. And Shock, Oath of Jace, Radiant Flames. Not a huge fan of Radiant Flames because it doesn't work. I guess it kind of does. I was gonna say like the stuff you have to kill is bigger than it, but maybe 3 is enough. So like I kind of like the 2 mana things that do 3, because then you can team it up with something if you have to. But I guess 1 Radiant Flames is good if you're doing all this scrying and stuff. But Rebuff, I think, went way down in value when the Delirium decks stopped being Ishkanah decks. Like, you can't counter a Gearhulk with it, which is embarrassing. You'll just die, basically. So, not a huge fan of that. But I think, like, Radiant Flames should just be Fumigate. One of the Oath of Jaces could be, or one of the Shocks or something could be like Oath of Chandra, so that your Guardians can turn into FTKs. And then the rebuffs should probably just be like a Dispel and a Disallow, or another Negate and a Disallow. No, a Dispel and a Disallow. Or like a Dispel and the 4th Anticipate. I like Anticipate a lot. Not a huge fan of the Shock, though. I guess you probably don't have the room or mana to play Stasis Snares. Yeah, I would tweak with these numbers, but this is like the type of shell that I would build if somebody told me to build Jeskai Saheeli. 2 Fumigate and Radiant Flames 2, 3, and 4 in the board. Negates 3 and 4. Dispels 1 and 2. Decommission? Oh, okay. Naturalize for 1 more. I like it. I like that they're not just leaning on Fragmentize. I actually like that a lot. Quarantine Field, okay. And then Spell Queller I like as well for the other combo decks to actually like give you a clock and stuff. Punishment to deal with the Green White tokens before Gideon Emblem happens. Yeah, but then like you Radiant Flames their terrible board, and then they play Gideon and make a 2/2, and you're still behind. That's why I don't like it. I'd rather like wait, take a big hit, negate the thing, and then fumigate. Like, it just doesn't slot in very well with your counter magic. Unless you get up to 6, in which case you're fine anyway, because, like, you can just take the hit, and if they don't play the thing, and step Gearhulk or removal spell, kill a thing, and catch up like that. Like, you're stabilized, you know? You could even go after their untapped thing, and then attack the Planeswalker, and then Wrath or whatever, like... Yeah, we're going over the deck lists from Standard. Decommission gets flashback with Gearhulk, which is nice. Another very, very good point. Yep, I dig it. Mardu Vehicles. So this is the deck that probably got hit the most by Copter's ban, because like the blue-white decks are still, or the white-based decks are still great, because Copter was like the 3rd best card in those decks, but Copter was by far the best card in these decks. So that's rough. But Heart of Kirin with just Gideons is pretty bad. still like the caravans, disintegrations. Shock is pretty good right now. Although I think that I just lied to you. I think 3 is pretty important because you hit the 2/3 snake, the 3/3 thing, the what's the other 3 butt? Hey, blue spider. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But, Hurricane was... Yeah, I mean, it's easy enough to crew at 3, because, like, 3 power, 3 power, 3 power, 3 power, 3 power. Literally, only 2 of the creatures can't crew it by itself. The question isn't whether you can crew it, it's whether it's worth it to crew, you know? Like, at that point, you could just be playing Cultivator's Caravan, which costs 1 more, but gives you a 1 mana rebate. Has better utility, and a 5/5 is bigger than a 4/4, though Flying Vigilance isn't nothing. I think it's hurt a lot by Ballista. Yep, that was going to be what I was going to say, is not Ballista specifically, although you're completely right, but just that aggro is really bad right now because of things like Yeheni's expertise and Fatal Push being so efficient, Shock being so efficient, and Ballista. Like, a lot of the metagame, a lot of the best cards, the best spells, and the best decks that are playing all these cards are very good against you. Like, you're inherently behind the 8 ball from the get-go, which is hard since that's what you, as the aggro deck, is trying to do to somebody else. Like, you're trying to make it so you're like, as the aggro deck, I'm like, when I sit down, I'm like, you better not stumble, because, you know, you miss 1 drop and you're freaking dead. And instead of that, it's like the aggro deck sits down and the other person is just like, you better not miss, you know, you better have the perfect tools, because I have exactly what I need to punish you, so everything better go right for you. Like, that's... The tables are turned because of the way that the power is distributed in the metagame. So I'm already leaning very far away from being an aggro player in this metagame. And then add on top of that, that this deck is just... Like, you have to play these terrible cards that don't really make sense because your copters are gone. And... Like, you're like a 22 land deck with a bunch of 4-drops. Like, you're just... The deck doesn't work. It doesn't... It's not what I want to be doing. It's like, I almost like Harvester better than Heart of Kirin. Consoles I'm not a huge fan of. Rejection's great, but pretty hard to cast. Harness Lightnings should probably be main if you're going to play them. Sky Sovereign's weird in your 22 land deck. Declaration in Stone is probably worse than Stasis Snare. And Fragmentize. Not a fan. Alright. Ooh, another tokens deck. Let's see if this one's an actual tokens deck. Nope. It has the Ballistas at least. But then it's splitting Gearhulks with Avacyn. Rishkar with Thalia. Has Heart of Kirin and none of the expertise thing. No thank you. Esper Aggro. Scrounger, Queller, Inspector, Exemplar, Avacyn, Thalia, Gideon. Snare. Ooh, I like Rebuke. Doesn't have quite enough enablers for it, I don't think, just Inspectors to turn it into Mana Leak. But even at 3 mana, it's fine, because leaving up 3 is what you're doing with Queller or snare, and you can leave up 2 and a clue, and if they play something, leak it, and if they don't, then just crack the clue. I like that. I think Rebuke is super underrated. It just doesn't really have a home. At least not yet. But like Mana Leak is insane. Mana Leak is so good right now. And there are plenty of 1-mana artifacts that you are willing to play anyway. No, I know. I said that, but that's it. It doesn't have. It only has those 4 to turn it into Mana Leak on 2. It doesn't have. It doesn't have any of the. What do you call them? Like Terrarion or the things. The red one does 1 to their face. The green one does something. There's a map that finds a land. The white one like gains 2 life. I don't know. And then there's the implements. Thank you. And there's a bunch of trinkets like that. And then there's the 1/1. There's the like pseudo Xanthid Swarm guy, and the haste that you can sacrifice and play cards that exile. In red. So those cards are still a thing. And I don't know. I wish I transferred all the deck lists. All my like brew deck lists are on my other computer, or on my terrible old laptop. But I wish I had those, because I have a bunch of Metallic Rebuke decks, because I think Improvise is insane. Like, Improvise is actually quietly broken. We just haven't seen it yet. Yeah, map. Rebuke? Yeah. I mean, there are a bunch of cards that are just insane with Copter, that it was like, did you really think that that this was going to be okay? Like, it's already too good, but then you were going to print all these other cards that work amazing with it too? I don't know. I don't know, R&D. Not so sure. But yeah, I think Improvise is great, and this is one of the more powerful Improvise cards. It's also one of the ones that has the least amount of setup. Like, a lot of the Improvise cards you have to like build your deck around, but this one you can just like have some artifacts and then it's a good Mana Leak. And I think Spell Queller is still like one of the best cards in the format, so building an aggressive shell around it is pretty strong. I don't love Avacyn's, but I guess that's kind of the flash type thing that they're trying to do. But yeah, I definitely changed some card choices in this deck, but I like the idea of it. It's basically just the blue-white flash update. Yeah. Majors was onto it too. Majors and Sam were both onto it. Onto how busted Improvise is and how abusable it is and how people should be looking to build decks with those. One of the decks I built had the 6-mana Improvise thing and was just straight Aristocrats. That deck was great. I might tweet that one later if I remember. Black-white aggro. What is minor? Oh, wait, this thing. I like Anguish Unmaking. Heart of Kirin with Liliana. I don't know if your mana can support that. Yeah, yes, they have to play Forsaken Sanctuary to get away with Liliana's on 3. It's funny. Yeah, sure. again, like, I don't want to be like, all right, I'm going to build an aggro deck. How do I build the aggro deck? Like, that's so far from where I would start that I would never come to this conclusion. But if somebody was like, you have to build a black-white aggro deck, that is the deck that you have to build, then I bet my build would look pretty close to this. So, good on you, Brian, for constructing your deck well, even if I don't think that it is, like, even a tier 2 deck. Just Kaisa Healy by Todd Stevens. 3 Felidar Guardian. Nahiri, nice. They have the Fumigate, but they also have the Flames. They have way less counter magic is how they're doing this. They have like no counter magic. Just negates and dispel. They don't have the disallows. Oath of Jace. Just this. This is like the only thing that this deck can blink for value. I mean, you can blink a Nahiri if it's low somehow, but how does a Nahiri get low? I guess you just blink it to activate it again, not really to up its count. Shock, negate, lightning, glimmer, dispel, anticipate, snare. Sure. I think I'd build it closer to the other deck, but it's still the same idea, similar execution. I actually love the other card, the Pinger, the Implement in the other deck. That was cute. Constantly Crackdown. Jesus. Not messing around. Yeah, pretty normal. Besides Crackdown and Gear Hulk. Weird choices, but probably fine. Blue-Red control by Raymond Perez. My boy. Ooh, only 2 Dynavolt Towers. I want to play as many of these as possible in these decks. 4 Gear Hulk is awesome. Jace is fine. Blinking Gear Hulks? I think if you're blinking Gear Hulks, you've probably already won. Rebuff is so bad. Negate's great. Disallows great. 4 Lightning, 4 Glimmer, love it. Especially with the Gear Hulks. 4 Anticipate, love it. Brutal Expulsion's a weird one that I don't really love. I'd rather just have more Dynavolt Towers. But I love the Disallow stuff. And another thing that I was looking at with decks like this is playing Baron, but the 1 blue, 1/3 that makes your things cost less and your counters draw cards. Like a bunch of negates and dispels and disallows and like 2 of those things, you can have some pretty sick draws. Roof got better since Kadra was banned. Incorrect! It got worse because Emrakul was banned, which means that Ishkanaz no longer played, and it was the main like expensive thing that you were countering with it. Ishkanaz are now Verdurous Gear Hulks and Ballistas, which this does not counter. But we're all Chief of Complaints. I love that card, and I think that you could do something pretty nasty with it in these decks. There's a couple ways to build this deck. One is just like this, like a normal blue control deck. A couple of barrels and all the counters I like a lot. And the other way is barrels and some counters and take inventory and Tormented Voice. And then you just go off. Yeah, it's a loot, but like you draw a bunch of cards and have a bunch of stuff that you don't want. Like, you're using the barrel as, like, a sweet thing, not as, like, the core to your deck, you know? Thing in the Ice and Barrel is pretty sweet, too. That would be, like, the version of the deck that has take inventories and stuff, I would play Thing in the Ice for sure. Especially because now you have more things that they have to kill. Is 4 Gear Hulk too many? 3 seems better to me. No, I think 4 is fine. Like, I think 4 and a Jace. Like, I think 5 is probably too many. But I think 4 is right. Dragon Master Outcast. Interesting sideboard card. It's like a... for combo control, I guess? So that you can play a threat and have counter magic up? I don't know. Brutal Expulsion. I don't like this one, let alone this one. Rejections, Dispels. Kozilek's Return, I like in theory, but I think you have to get to 3. Like, the 3 butts are too strong that I don't know if this card actually works. Negate, Dismissal, and another Jace. We might get to the blue-black. Oh, here it is. I want to look at this green-white tokens deck first, but we'll look at it. I like that counter, theoretically. It's another one of these... This isn't a tokens deck. Like, people want to call this a tokens deck because the last version of this deck in the last metagame had some of these cards, and that deck was called tokens. But there's, like, these are the only things that make tokens. 3 Ballista, 3 Gear Hulk. Almost there. You almost have the right numbers of those cards. The expertise on the board, I just don't get it. What are you even trying to do? By the way, we were just talking about improvise. Shrim's expertise makes servos. Improvise. Bang, bang. Blue, black, control. 4 Gear Hulk. 1 Kalitas, 1 Jace. I still think this is too bad. Like, sorcery speed thing that doesn't really do what you need it to impact the board or to, like, okay, so against aggro, this isn't enough of a board impact. And against control, it's not enough value before it gets killed by, you know, something that kills a planeswalker. So, what matchup do you want this for? It's not good against the mid-range decks. It's not good against the comes into play ability creatures. It's not, like, it's just not good anywhere. Not a fan. Is Deadlock Trap seen in any decks at all? I mean, it's sometimes a one of. My first version of Dynavolt Tower deck had Treasure Mage, or whatever that card is called, Treasure Hunter. So I had 1 Deadlock Trap to find with that. That was cute. We're going to stop the control decks from being all of the new meta with aggro decks being so bad. Aggro decks, it's not that aggro decks are bad, it's just that, okay, it is that aggro decks are bad, but aggressively stanced aggro, mid-range aggro decks are still insanely good, like the green-black deck, like the deck that won. And then you have the fact that the swath of what a control deck has to deal with is wide enough that it's hard to land on the correct answer all the time. So the control decks are the new rock decks, basically. And then the tempo aggro decks should destroy the control decks. The like blue-white flash update decks, those decks are real good. And some of the Saheeli decks have good control matchups too. The ones that are set up to go long and get value out of the Guardians and stuff. Like, control is not going to be dominant. It's going to be good. Control is definitely very good right now, but the metagame is such that it's not going to be, you know, it's like, we don't have Sphinx's Revelations. Like, there's not a big enough uptick that there's, or a big enough, like, catch-all card like that where control can just be dominant. Like, there's not even a consensus 1 control deck. There's, like, 4 control decks that all function very differently. Confirmed Suspicions is cute. I love Disallow. I like this thing. I forgot about this card. This thing's great with Gear Hulk. The problem is you have to be a control deck that can make black, which there aren't many of. But If you do, you get to play one of these and 4 Grasps. That's cute. 2 Fatal Push, of course. Glimmer, I don't really love when you don't have things to do with the energy. Grasp, of course. Horribly Awry I like a lot right now. I like this a lot more than Rebuff. But I think that I would just play the Disallows, Negates, and Dispels in the decks that had Rebuff. Don't like Murder. Do like Negate. Flight Shatter, sure. Ruinous Path, yes. 27 lands with a Blighted Fen, sure. I like it. It's fine. I really don't know that Glimmer is the draw spell you want. But I guess options are thin. And Sphinx of the Final Word. That's pretty good. Dead Weight and Fatal Pushes, Rejection, Dispel, Negate, more Kalitas, another Ruinous Path, and a Cataract to go up to 28 lands. Into it, into it. How do you feel about Zero Anticipate? I am in favor of Zero Anticipate, but I don't think that Glimmer is the best you could be doing. I'd have to look, but this deck doesn't, like, all of its cards kind of do the same thing. So all Anticipate would be is, like, to make sure that you make your land drops and to find, I guess, Gear Hulks late. But, like, your deck already does that pretty well. Like, if you wanted to play 25 lands, then, for whatever reason, then you would have to play Anticipates. But if you play 27 lands and then normal distribution of spells, you don't really need Anticipate. Because, again, you're looking, with Anticipate, you're looking for specific things. It doesn't help you in card count. It's a velocity card and a selection card. And you don't really need either of those things with blue-black control, where all of your cards are just Doomblades and counterspells. Yeah, but that's why it's designed that way. It's only a 5/5 and it's 7 mana. Like, this would have been great 10 years ago, but in the state of Magic, like compare it to Torrential Gear Hulk, right? This thing is bigger, has flash, is cheaper, and casts a fucking spell. It's hard to look at this and be like, yeah, but I can't interact with it. Like, yeah, are you beating this thing? I didn't think so. Ili Cassis. Alright, this is, what? Ili, bro, come on. So this is, a different version of Bobby Graves' deck. But the Attune Oath-based, CIP, or ETB, I guess you kids call it now. But it plays Nahiri and Authority for some reason. You found a thing to do with the Authority, which is throw it away with Nahiri, so at least there's that. But Refiner's insane, especially if you can use the energy with this, which this deck kind of can't. It just has the Harnessed Lightning. Like, the other deck had to play frickin' Whirler Virtuoso and the Aether Shield Thief thing. And... ugh. So it could actually use its energy. This thing just makes a shit ton of energy and then can't use any of it, which I don't like. But I also wouldn't play Cloud Blazer. I think something like Oath of Jace is better than this. I do like this deck. I think I would play, like, in between these two decks. Like, the things that changed between the decks, half of them I would do, and half of them I would do something else. But, yes. Checkers in the board, another authority, Blessed Alliance. I love this, yes! And a root out? Nice! Oh, Alicasis knows how to build a sideboard, and I love it. Fumigate, Radiant Flames I'm not in love with, but sure. But yeah, I really like this deck. I just would make a lot of different choices on the specific card choices. This is Bobby Graves' deck. See a side-by-side comparison. Anything else interesting? Heart of Kirin with no Lilianas. Yeah, this deck is not good. There's a way to build this deck, but that's not it. Oh, ooh, Long Tusk Cub, cute. Rampager? I like this idea of, like, Blossoming Defense's super aggro version, but I think that I would play green-red and build it like Joe Lissette's Invitational, or not Invitational, Players Championship deck. I think the green-red version of this deck works, but if you're gonna play green-black, just play this. Just play DeCandio's deck. Obviously, this player didn't necessarily know about DeCandio's deck when entering this tournament, but Blue-White Spirits, eh? Metallic Mimic. This card is also busted, by the way. With the 1-mana artifact. A lot of my decks that I was talking with, that I was building with Metallic Rebuke had the 1-mana artifact that can, you like pay 3 and tap it and add a counter, or when a +1/+1 counter comes into play, you can pay 1 animation module. Yeah, Mimic animation module and that ability. Some really strong shells there. Some really, really strong shells. This one you just named Spirits. Not sure Wanderer is where you want to be. Ah, Pestermate. Still play the Inspector. Glimmer of Genius. I don't even have anything for it. No counter magic except for the Quellers. I like the other version, the one that had the Scrounger. I think that's the way to build this deck. Played a Cataract, Jesus. Let's look at the sideboard, nothing interesting. Da-da-da-da. Danny Jessup. I assume this is the deck I was just talking about. Yeah. I like this deck. Heart of Kirin still sucks, but I like this deck. Da-da-da-da. Grixis Emerge. Ooh, see, this is the way to build the zombies deck. Yeah, Rebuke is great. I think you need a couple more artifacts than just the 4 Inspectors, but that's not hard to get. Inspector there seems very loose. Nah, Inspector's great. A lot of my Saheeli Rai decks had Inspector Rebuke. And the Hope of Girpur, and I don't know. I really need to just like tweet my decks, or at least keep them on Google Drive so I can bring them up when I talk about them on stream. But I like this deck. There's something here for sure. Fever Visions is busted too, though I'm not sure it's in that deck that it's busted. Left control, is this just Jim Davis, or is this... Ooh, no. Oh, yeah, it is, basically. Heart of Curing! And Planeswalkers. This is completely different. Main deck Expertise. I felt the bridge is a little weird. This is kind of cool. Blue-black Planeswalker control. Still has glimmers with no thing. Like, just play other forms of card advantage. You don't have to play, like, something that says draw 2 cards. Disallows busted still. And Tezzeret's great. That Tezzeret is awesome. People just need to figure out how to use it. Green-red energy, is this like Joe Lassette's deck? Yeah, buddy! Ooh, Arlen Cord. You could definitely play the, ugh. Not a fan of this card in this deck. Because, like, what are you going to crew with? All your things are huge. Just attack with these. I don't like this card choice at all. I like this one, though. That's cute. I don't think you need to attune either. I don't think you need this many energy things. Like, your stuff already makes energy. And you could play the Ballista in this deck very easily, too. Like, Harvester is just makes no sense in this deck. Like, Attune I kind of get. I disagree with it, but I kind of get it. Harvester I think is just straight wrong. But I like this deck. Teamer Aetherworks. Torrential Gearhulk. I like this way to build this deck. Dynamo Tower is still insane. The fact that people gave up on Tower is silly. Although I do think that part of the reason is because if you're playing like blue-red, then you can just play white and place a Healy combo, which I get, but Tower's still an awesome card. Yeah, no, I get Attune. I'm just saying I'd rather just play like 2 more lands and 2 more spells. Marvel into Nothing, you just get... It's just a value card. Like, it's not an I win the game thing. It's just free, huge spells. Charlemagne, I already did, and I will post this to YouTube so you can check it out. But the short version is I think that the deck that won is insane and very well built. That was all for that. Let's see if there's anything interesting in the Open. Or the Classic, I should say. Wow, this deck... Oh wait, this is a way better version of this deck. Look at the counter magic. This is how you build this deck. Fragmentized Main is cute. Shrivels instead of disallows because of mana concerns is a little annoying. And I don't like Immolating Glare at all. Or the Glimmer. But Gideons, Avacens, this is how you build this deck. Should definitely have disallows, though. Disallow is great. But Shrivels, you could play, like... Like, instead of Wanderers and Heralds, play Thribbon Inspectors and something else, and then these can become the Metallic Rebukes, the Shrivels and Rebuffs. I think that that's the better way to build this. And then you get Disallows instead of, like, the Fragmentize in these. I like this deck a lot. So instead of Disallows may also be... I only have one Disallow? Maybe, but... yeah, they have one in the board. I think it's mana concerns. And they're correct to be concerned about it, but... there are ways around that as well. Harvester in the board I like. I mean, it makes a lot more sense in the board than it does in the main. Same with Authority. The fact that so many people main deck this card is just a giant joke. This is not the same as the one that extorted people. I like this deck. Let me just check this and make sure. Yeah. Ooh. This is the energy version, but with the Gearhulk Ballista Constrictor Rishkar package. So what is it giving up? It's playing the energy things instead of... ooh, and Nisa's. I'm off it. Back off it! Instead of more removal spells and the other 3-drop. Meh. Just the worst version of Decandio's deck. One Dynavolt Tower for value. I like that. Prism is another good one for Rebuke. I like this deck. Pretty simple. Straightforward build. Meh. Other Mardu vehicles. Can't imagine this deck's any good. Black, white, Eldrazi. Ooh la la! Look at this one. Thopter Arrest? Blank Heart of Kiran's again. Why are people so obsessed with playing these cards? It's like they got them in their collection, and so they have to play them. Metalwork Colossus? No, we have not come across a Metalwork Colossus deck. This card is sauce. For Transgress main. I love this deck. I really love this deck. I think Heart of Kiran is hot garbage, but there's a lot about this deck that I like a lot. Yeah, they just banned a 2-mana vehicle that flies. This one must be busted too. I mean, don't get me wrong. Heart of Kiran is a very good card. It's just not in every deck. just does not work like that. Yeah, completely terpy pup. Lost Legacy is hot garbage as well. Although I get it in black-white a lot more than I get it in green-black. Meh. Blue-black zombies. Hello. This deck's cute. Key to the City is another good artifact for improvise, because you can just tap it to it and then draw a card. You don't have to, it's not rummaging, it's straight up drawing. It's JMD Tomb instead of Looter. Concoction's weird. But it's another onboard thing. Like, this card's probably great against the combo, because enchantments are hard for Jessica to deal with. Heart of Kirin with Lily. Why? It has no synergies in your deck. Your deck is like all this sweet graveyard stuff and removal and card draw and planeswalkers, and you just have this thing. It's maybe sometimes a 4/4. Like, I can say this with confidence. You will not see at the Pro Tour from like the major teams decks that just have 2 Heart of Kirin thrown in it. That is not how the pros build their decks, you know? So the fact that we see this, I'm not trying to like shit on Shane Coy here, but just like the fact that we look at so many of these decks and there's just a random couple of Heart of Kirins that don't really make any sense, like it's very telling. That's not optimal. Alright. I think we're done rambling about those decks.